The Arizona Cardinals need to sign Ryan Tannehill to back up Kyler Murray. I'll explain. Everything's okay. Let's discuss.
You are Locked On Cardinals, your daily Arizona Cardinals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Cardinals, Alex Clancy here. Follow me on Twitter at Clancy's Corner _. Follow the podcast at Locked On AZ Cards. Thank you for making Locked On Cardinals your first listen, free wherever you get your podcast, and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, inching closer towards week 1, which will be my 8th season covering this dang team with this podcast. This is going to be the most fun year yet. And, you know, everybody gets excited at this time of year where it's like, and this is the irrational thought that everybody has at some point, even if it's for a fleeting second. It's like, oh, this team could go 17-0. This team could win the Super Bowl. Records are meant to be broken, right? It's just, it's funny, but that's kind of where we are in the season. And there's a lot to discuss about this team's roster construction, possibilities, bringing in outside talent, riding with who they've got. There's a lot still to discuss. Today's episode of Locked On Cardinals is brought to you by FanDuel. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Okay, so here we go. Let's just start it out right away. When you've got a situation where the Cardinals are in right now, it makes it very interesting regarding the quarterback position. And this is not to say anybody should expect Kyler Murray to get injured. This is not to say Kyler Murray will get injured. This is not to say Kyler Murray is an injury-prone player, okay? When you look at what happened in 2022, it wasn't like he was taking a bunch of hits and, you know, it ended up resulting in an injury. That's not what happened. I mean, he got hit and he didn't even get hit and just went down in the open field. Okay. So with that, this is something that I've been thinking about for a while. And it's something that I think needs to be discussed in an adult manner. I, for one, do not trust in any world Clayton Tune to be able to muster 50% of the production that Kyler Murray produces. And, I mean, Desmond Ritter's not even in the conversation. So while it's fun and it's cool and it's their 5th-round pick out of Houston from 2 years ago, and he won a bunch of games in college, and he was a Desmond Ridder loss away against Cincinnati from inching closer to the college football playoff, this isn't a fairy tale. Desmond Ridder is not QB2 material. And QB2 material has changed incredibly over the last couple seasons with, quarterback injuries at a rate we've never seen. Like, it's more impressive, or it's more believable that a quarterback would miss 1 game or 2 than play the entire 17 weeks. And that's bonkers. So with that, you got to think. Are they going to trade for a quarterback? No. Are they going to ride with Clayton Tune? Maybe, but I think that's very, very risky. This is the team that traded for Joshua Dobbs 2 weeks before the season started last year. So it's not like this is uncharted waters and uncharted territory. So when I thought about that, it's like, okay, who's out there that the Cardinals could go get that wouldn't garner $20 million to be a backup, that has regressed enough to where backup is a situation that he finds himself in where he had it up until this point, and a guy who has somewhat of a similar skill set to Kyler Murray. What is a similar skill set to Kyler Murray? I've gotten some brushback here. Brian, you'll get your shout out here. Like, a guy that's not Peyton Manning in the pocket. A guy that's not Colt McCoy in the pocket. A guy that is not the antithesis of Kyler Murray's ability to extend plays outside of the pocket with the elusivity that comes along with it. Now, that's not to say it needs to be a guy who runs a 4.40. It's not to say a guy who needs to have the biggest arm, because trust me, if there was somebody like that, they'd be starting for an NFL team. So when you're looking at quarterback twos, like bona fide backup quarterback twos, like in an Andy Dalton sense, where it's like Andy Dalton's going to play for another 7 years as a backup. But Andy Dalton doesn't have, like, he's more of a Peyton Manning than he is a Kyler Murray. So when you look at it, and you look at a guy who has playoff winning pedigree and a guy who still doesn't have a job, who's probably holding out to see a quarterback, go down before he joins, it's like, why not go get Ryan Tannehill? And listen, Ryan Tannehill hasn't had the best record the last 2 years. Their offense has been Derrick Henry. Mike Vrabel wasn't very outside the box thinking when it came to offense. They traded A.J. Brown in 2022 for the rights of Treylon Burks. That didn't work. A.J. Brown has gone off to a meteoric rise, and Treylon Burks is, look how many wide receivers they've had to bring in because he ain't cutting it. DeAndre Hopkins, now Tyler Boyd, and Calvin Ridley. That was a failed experiment. And it was Derrick Henry first option, Derrick Henry second option, Derrick Henry third option. Ryan Tannehill has an average to above average arm. He, as everybody states whenever they talk about him, played a wide receiver at Texas A&M, went down to Miami, wasn't a great quarterback, and then went to Tennessee, I think he was traded to Tennessee, and he just became an above average quarterback in the system that was set in place there. And yes, it's easier to produce, you would think, when you have a run first and run second option. But Ryan Tannehill has made some very, very important throws at very, very important times. They went on the road to beat Brady in New England. They went on the road to beat Baltimore in Baltimore, where Lamar Jackson threw the ball like 75 times. They lost in the AFC Championship game to Kansas City after having a 21-0 lead, I think. 24-0, 21-0, and that was in 2019. Okay, so I know that it's a long ways away, and I'm not going to Uncle Rico this situation where, yeah, he threw a football a quarter mile 5 years ago. What does that mean now? What it means is he's been there. Cole McCoy ain't won jack, but he was looked at as one of the most important players on this team and one of the most important signings that offseason. They brought him in because it adds stability to the quarterback room. I'm going to ask you a very simple question. Do you trust Clayton Tune to lead the Cardinals to a win if Kyler Murray were to go? Honestly. And you don't have to agree with me. Do you think Clayton Tune has what it takes in a game that matters? And I'm not even talking about the Cleveland game last year. I've omitted that as a game from my memory, especially directly correlated to the performance by Clayton Tune, because he was Sonny at the toll booths. He had no shot. I don't think he has what it takes to be the backup quarterback the Cardinals need him to be, because keep in mind, and this is something that, it's never been, at least since Kyler Murray's been drafted, and, especially with what they're doing now with the rebuild and the positive momentum and all those things. If Kyler Murray gets hurt and has to miss time, this locomotive cannot slow down. Because what that does is it brings everything on the table. Everything changes if Kyler Murray gets hurt in 2024. Not say he misses 2 or 3 games and they go 0-3, they lose by 30 every game with Clayton Tune starting. It's like, okay, well, we got to go back to the drawing board here. What does the future look like? Smart teams now have 2 quarterbacks who can win games. What you want from a backup is to be able to be a spot starter for 2 games during the year, go 1-1. Keep the momentum going. This locomotive cannot slow down if Kyler Murray gets hurt. And with that, there's no way you can put Clayton Tune out there and believe that will give you at least even a 50% chance of winning as if it were Kyler Murray. I don't care how good the offense is. I don't care that Josh Dobbs ran it last year. It's different. And they've got an absolute murderer's row schedule this year to start the season. First 8 weeks, up until the bye almost in week 11. I don't see Clayton Tune being the guy. I see Ryan Tannehill being the guy. And you can give him a 2-year, $12 million, $8 million guaranteed contract like the Jets gave Tyrod Taylor. Yeah, it's a little bit more than you want for a quarterback, but you have that safety net if something goes awry. And that is so much more valuable than saving a couple $1 million on a backup quarterback. Alex Nancy, Locked On Cardinals, your team every day. Pass rush needs help. The grim reality of that I will discuss in the final segment. But I'm going to circle back to a topic that was super hot 2 weeks ago, and it was in the completely wrong lens, and people were talking about it completely wrong. I will talk about it completely right, even if my grammar was terrible there. Locked On Cardinals, your team every day. This episode of Locked On Cardinals is brought to you by FanDuel. And listen, you've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Well, we have something a little different for you. Now, through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. You don't get the hometown games you don't get more than just the hometown games where you live. You can watch them all. And all you got to do is bet $5. And if you want to test it out, FanDuel will give you 3 weeks free of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with the YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season game Sunday afternoon out of market games. Every regular season Sunday afternoon out of market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to download America's #1 sportsbook. Ryan Tannehill's the guy. I just think it's perfect. He's Kyler Murray's version of Colt McCoy. Stability, consummate pro. I asked Tyler Rowland of Locked On Titans, my buddy who I host Locked On NFL Thursday with. I'm like, give me an elevator pitch of Ryan Tannehill, in between the lines, in practice, in the locker room. He goes, consummate pro, leader. And Tyler thinks that he's still holding out for a starting gig. And that would make sense. I mean, he's 36. He'll be 37, I believe, when the season starts, which is still a young pup for quarterbacks nowadays. I think that it would be an absolute no-brainer for the Cardinals to bring him in, overpay him, but you have that safety net that they 100% don't have now. So with Haason Reddick, the interesting part about him, his situation, and why it's not like Randy Gregory situation who didn't even report to camp, why it's not like a troublemaker pass rusher. It's the difference is he said he wanted a new contract before he was traded. The Jets are fumbling this. So this isn't egomania at its finest. This isn't a 30-year-old pass rushers like, this is my last big deal, I want to cash in. It is. And he also told everybody that at the end of last season. So this isn't a surprise. The Jets are just fumbling this. They never should have traded for him. With that, breeds opportunity. Say the Jets are like, you know what, we want a hard reset here. Didn't give up a whole bunch to get him. The only, in my opinion, acceptable Haason Reddick trade, and you can watch multiple videos I posted, podcasts that I posted and audio video, saying that they should not trade for Haason Reddick because it doesn't move the needle enough to warrant the money that he's going to want. The defense isn't going to bring this team to the playoffs just because they traded for Haason Reddick. The defense isn't there yet. It's not one missing piece or 2 missing pieces. They've got 7 missing pieces on defense so far. Having said that, when situations change, in this case, when situations stay the same, it yields opportunity. And the opportunity for the Cardinals would be 4th-round pick. Oh, no, it's too high. No, it's not. Stop it. Oh, they need all their draft picks. No, they don't. Monty builds through the draft. He had 39 draft picks in the last 2 years, okay? You don't always need all of your draft picks. It depends on the situation. If you offer the Jets a 4th-round pick for Haason Reddick, Haason Reddick comes over, and you give him the J.J. Watt deal, 2-year, $40 million, 30 guaranteed. While the sticker shock is like, oh, that's so much money. No, it's not. Number one, it's going to be less than he wants. The contract is going to be not as long as he wants. And this is a perfect back-to-back year situation where the Cardinals can afford it, where it won't break the bank. They've got $30 million to spend. For this year, sure, you can roll some of it over, but if you bring in Ryan Tannehill and you trade for Haason Reddick, you take $23 million of that, immediate upgrade in two key positions. Obviously, key is the understatement of the century. The two biggest need of positions the Cardinals have, backup quarterback and pass rusher. You could say corner. I mean, backup quarterback is loosely defined because, Kyler Murray, you expect him to not get hurt, but if he does, you need the contingency plan. And then next year, they're going to have over $90 million to spend. $15 million for a pass rusher, who even if he's 31, he's going to be the best pass rusher on the team. And it could be a hard reset on the original relationship between the organization and the player. And this isn't like, oh, he's coming home. Stop. This is a completely different team. Completely different organization. Arizona Cardinals 2.0 is in name only. This is an unrecognizable organization over the last, 20 months or so, compared to the one that drafted Haason Reddick and then couldn't figure out where to use him for 4 years. He's played with Jonathan Gannon and Nick Rallis. That part makes sense. Okay. The money, if you want 4 year with 80 guaranteed or something, the money that the Bills gave Von Miller, he ain't getting that. But the Jets want to move him. Like, obviously, conversation would have to be had. Even like a 3-year deal, you front load the money with an out after the second year, something like that. Like, you can make a situation like this beneficial for the Cardinals by parlaying the idiocy of Joe Douglas and the Jets for trading for him and not having a contract in place that he was going to be happy with. That's their fault. The Cardinals can reap the benefits of that by getting, dimes on the dollar, quarters on the dollar. Because he's going to need to play football. He's going to want to get paid. And a 2-year deal with $30 million guaranteed is a lot better than him sitting for a year. Now, there's going to be other suitors. This is something that's really I don't know if this has ever happened before, where a player gets traded 2 years, twice in one offseason. But if they continue to be like an English channel away from what both sides want, and you can give him a team-friendly and player-friendly shorter-term deal with the amount of money the Cardinals have, I think that would be as close to a no-brainer as possible. It'd be the opposite of, trade him, give him 4 year, $100 million, 80 guaranteed. Stop. It's not going to be that. It's not going to be that. But if they could find something that works for both sides, would Haason Reddick add to this defense? Of course. He'd be the ultimate number one pass rusher. He'd be great for Xavier Thomas and BJ Ojulari, even though Ojulari's out for the year. He'd be great for the younger guys. It's like, listen, I was where you were at. Let me show you what I did to get to where I am now. Plus, he knows the defense. He thrived in the defense. He's undersized. He's going to be 30. That's great. Pass rushers can still be borderline prolific, above average production by 31, 32. That's why a 2-year deal would be perfect, especially when the Cardinals are moving. They're trying to get to that next level, and they're definitely not there yet. But, if he wants 4 years, if he wants 3 years and $60 million guarantees, it just ain't going to work. If you can do the J.J. Watt deal with him and you give him a fourth rounder is not that, I get it, okay? This team, after this year, won't need to get younger. They won't need to. If you can get him for a fourth rounder and only do a 2-year, $40 million, $30 million guaranteed, call it a day. Outside chance, but that's the one acceptable offer that could be accepted by Haason Reddick and Joe Douglas and the Jets that would benefit the Cardinals and not put them in a bad situation as they're trying to rebuild this organization organically. There is a grim reality, though. And we've had a fun show so far. Let's hold on to that while this next segment's not going to be so fun. Next. Thanks for hanging out. Go to the YouTube channel, search Locked On Arizona Cardinals. Hit that subscribe button. Turn notifications on. Leave a review if you'd like to counteract the one-star reviews I got from fans from other teams who didn't like what I had to say about their team. I'd appreciate it. Apple, Google Play, wherever. Thanks for making Locked On Cardinals your first listen today. For your second listen, enjoy the Locked On Fantasy Football podcast. Get daily insight to the best fantasy draft strategy so you can win your leagues this season. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. The grim reality is not a whole lot of free agents out there that can help the Cardinals right now, especially in the pass rush department. Yannick Ngakoue is still out there, okay? I feel like we would have already known if he was going to be an Arizona Cardinal. And I do feel like that he wants more money than the Cardinals or anybody else wants to give him. He's coming off injury. If Indy wanted him back, he would have already been an Indianapolis Colt. He's getting into, he can determine what he wants to do. There's some names that pop into my head who have gone a specific route. Darrelle Revis, Aqib Talib, DeAndre Hopkins, Jadeveon Clowney is probably the most notable as of late. Hired guns. Contractors. 1 year, 10 mil. 1 year, 8 mil. 1 year, 12 mil. 1 year, 10 mil. I don't care where I play. That's what I'm going to get. I'm going to go to a defensive scheme I like. And Jadeveon Clowney's made a whole bunch of money doing it. Maybe that's Yannick Ngakoue's time. I just don't see, unless he buys in, signs a 2-year deal, 12 mil, 10 mil guaranteed. I just don't see that happening. Aside from him, the grim reality that we're going to need to face here, and it's been creeping up, and it's been there, but it's really arrived, is this is what the defense is going to be. This is what we're going to be witnessing in 2024. Now, say they trade for Haason Reddick. Okay, we have a different conversation a little bit, but it's going to be Xavier Thomas, Cam Thomas, Darius Robinson, Bilal Nichols, Justin Jones, Kazir White, Mac Wilson in the middle. Whichever rookies stand out to be alongside Sean Murphy-Bunting and Garrett Williams, and then Budda Baker, Jalen Thompson, and Rabbit over the top. That's what it's going to be. And when I was looking down the free agent tracker, because #research, it's like oh boy. Now there's D-end help. There's interior defensive line, defensive tackle help. But from an outside linebacker perspective, it's not great. So we'll see what happens with Zaven Collins, Dennis Gardeck. But that portion of this whole story is that definition of insanity. You know exactly what Dennis Gardeck's going to be. Situational pass rusher is going to have 5, 7, 8 wow plays in the year, and that's going to be it. Zaven Collins is a complete mystery. We have no idea. We would have known if he was a Pro Bowler already. And we'll see what happens his second year. I mean, they gave him the extension. We'll see. But understanding that the Cardinals could very well give up 25, 27 points a game this year with regularity is something that may become a reality very quickly. Now, what's unfair about that is I'm weighing the majority of that on the unknown. A lot of question marks. Every day, as you'll know that this is how I discuss it. This is your first listen to Locked On Cardinals. Thank you. Maybe make tomorrow your second listen so you can hear my plethora of coined phrases, I guess. The question marks are different than what the hell is going on here. It's which players, especially which young players, will produce right away to keep this defense afloat. And Xavier Thomas is really, really impressed. I don't know if he's going to be situational. I don't know if it's going to be third down. The defensive schemes for Jonathan Gannon and Nick Rawls are Looney Tunes. So we have no idea. Like if Max Melton emerges and Darren Hall emerges, you're looking at 4 or 5 corners. Like it just what needs to emerge from the defense through the first couple weeks are playmakers. Doesn't really matter what position they come from. Jonathan Gannon and Nick Rawls will find a place, and they'll maximize. But if you're like, oh, well, Dennis Gardeck and Zaven Collins, it ain't cutting it. We knew that. So going into week 1, which is 17 days away, 18, look at the defense they have now. That's most likely what we're going to be witnessing for 18 weeks, including their bye. They've got the money to spend. Obviously, Monty Ossenfort traded for a quarterback that he started 2 weeks before the season started last year. So, yeah, Haason Reddick that I discussed last time, if they get that off, like if they can pull that offer off, sure, maybe you have Haason Reddick on this team. It's 99% not going to happen. Yannick Ngakoue, I feel like he would go to a team that's more established and ready to rock. Maybe he'll take $11 and go to Kansas City or something. Barring any sort of unforeseen rabbit out of keister, this is the defense the Cardinals are riding with. As I've stated multiple times, last year's offense is this year's defense. Proof of concept, see where you're at, and dump money and draft capital into it next season. They haven't done a whole lot on defense. And this is not, God, it really irks me when people take the lazy approach, especially people in the media. And I'm not going to name any names. Just because it looks like what it used to be doesn't mean that it is. Oh, same old Cardinals. It's not. The old Cardinals are the reason why the new Cardinals have to do what the new Cardinals are doing. This is part of a plan. That was part of ineptitude. This is part of a plan. That was due to not being able to draft. This is part of a bigger plan. And you cannot change an organization that has never won jack overnight. Well, the 49ers went from last to first and they went to a Super Bowl. Cool. How many Super Bowls have the 49ers won? How much more relevant have the 49ers been since their inception than the Arizona Cardinals? The Arizona Cardinals are running their own race. The majority of it was filled with dysfunction and self-deprecation and the inability to get out of their own way. This is what rational, step-by-step, incremental growth looks like. So just because the offense and defense aren't ready to rock for a Super Bowl less than 2 years removed from the worst GM I've seen in a long time doesn't mean that things are being run the same way. You can't rush this. Having said that, the defense may not look the best this year, and we may be looking at giving up 25, 27 points a game. I've said it, and I'll continue to say, if the Cardinals are bottom 5 defense this year, they're winning 5 games. 6 games, maybe, depending on how magical Kyler Murray and the offense can be. If the Cardinals are a top 22 defense, they can make the playoffs. That's how important this pass rush that is going to be faceless. This cornerback room that as right now is faceless. We'll see what they can do. If the question marks turn into positives, even 50%, we're having a completely different conversation. The reality of this is the safety net is non-existent on the defensive side of the ball. What Jonathan Gannon and Nick Rallis did last year was masterful for the majority of the first halves of last year's games. Aside from, like the 49ers blew them out. I mean, come on. There's more talent on defense this year than there was last year. There's more veteran leadership in key positions, even below Nichols and Justin Jones, to go along with Dante Stills. LJ Collier's back. Kazir White is healthy. Mac Wilson has played a couple years in the league. Sean Murphy-Bunting has won a Super Bowl. It's little, but it's a far cry from where it was last year. That's what the Cardinals have going for them, and that's what they need to rely upon in an effort to keep this defense afloat for 17 games. If they do, we're going to be having very positive conversations from week 14 on. All I can say is we'll see. But as of right now, the grim reality is help's not coming. Chances are this is the team on defense the Cardinals are going to ride with. We'll see what happens. Remember, without you, there is no me. I will talk to you tomorrow.